Cool. Okay, we're recording this demo. So I've downloaded my image in Photoshop. I'm going to go to Open, and then I'm going to find the image that I want to use for this project. I know I saved mine to my desktop in our demos folder, so I'm going to open up my image, and this is what I'm going to be looking at. Now, if you didn't use the shortcut to open Photoshop and it doesn't start at kind of the default reset view, remember you can always reset your workspace if you're missing your layers panel by going to the top right, that little drop down, and resetting essentials. And now I've got my layers panel back. So the first thing you do once you open up an image that you want to edit in Photoshop is to make a backup of it. So I'm going to do Control J with my background layer selected. And that makes a copy. So I like to have a backup of my backup, a belt and suspenders. So I'm going to name this first one backup that I just made, this one original. I totally misspelled that. I'm going to lock and hide my very bottom one so that it's just out of sight, out of mind. It's just there if I need it. I'm also going to lock my backup layer, but I'm not going to hide it because I still need to see it. I'm going to move my layers panel up too so you can all see it a little bit better from the classroom. Okay. Actually, I'll just pull it out. There we go. All right, so I've got my backup and my original, my two image layers. Now I'm ready to start adding some cool effects to Aretha Franklin. I'm going to make a new blank layer in my layers panel by clicking on that little square with the plus sign. I'm going to name it because this is going to be my outlines layer, so I'm going to call it outlines. And I'm just going to go in. I'm going to give a different color outline, though, because this is a black and white photo. We're not going to be able to see a black outline, really. So I might outline her in kind of a cool, I don't know, we'll give her like a dark purple, maybe. Okay. I'm going to zoom in with Control Plus so I can see a little better. And you can either freehand the outline by just clicking and holding down on your mouse and dragging your pointer around. Or if you want to use a trick that will make this go a little faster in especially larger areas like the arms and forearms and things, if you click and then hold Shift, I'm holding Shift this whole time. Anywhere that I'm clicking, it's making a straight line between where I click. I call this the connect the dots method, and it can make outlining things go a lot faster than having to just hold down your mouse. So I'm clicking here, I'm holding Shift, and I'm just kind of gradually going along the outlines of things, like facial features here. And that way I don't have to hold my mouse down the whole time. I can just kind of reposition my cursor as I go, and it can really help. Okay, so I'm outlining the face, the profile. Coming down here. Also outlining along the neckline. I'm doing kind of a sloppy job because I want to get all this different techniques addressed here quickly. So it's coming up here. We'll start with that. You would probably want to do the arms too and any other visible skin. If you're doing grime art, if you're doing something else, obviously go with your technique that you've chosen. On my outlines layer, also, I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, and this is where I'm going to come in and do facial features. So like the eye, the nose. This is where some kind of creative license comes into play because you're going to have to figure out how you outline something as complex as a nose. They're really difficult. So just trial and error, figure out what lines you want to highlight, what details you want to show without making it look too much like a pig nose. They're kind of hard. I'm going to kind of do these little details here. I'm going to give her that wrinkle in the forehead because she's kind of scrunching her eyes up, singing with all that emotion. Doing outlines of the eyes. And remember, if you want it to look realistic, go along with what you see in the photo, not what you imagine seeing. A lot of people, when they do eyes, they feel like they have to outline every single eyelash or something. And that kind of looks a little unnatural. So try and go with what you see and not what you imagine. All right. Another trick, folks, if you can see teeth in your subject, never outline between the teeth. It never looks good. It makes them look like they have food between their teeth. I mean, you can, but just know that's like where a lot of things go wrong. It just doesn't end up looking good. It's too harsh. If you want to add like some gum details or something, that can help outline the teeth without it just looking like they have food in their teeth. So that's a tip. If you've seen the show Arcane, that like really bugs me about the Arcane show is that their teeth all look dirty because they outline every tooth. Other than that, I love that show. Okay. I'm just going to wrap up my outlines really quick so I can show you the next piece of this. I can't totally see from this photo what's exactly happening with the bottom lip. It's a little hard because of all the different highlights, so I'm going to kind of have to make it up as best I can. I don't know. Hopefully that looks okay. If not, I can always change it later. All right, so here's some basic outlines of Aretha. I could always clean these up later, but I'm going to see if this is a good starting point. I'll give her some. Okay. I can check how my outlines are looking by turning off my photo layer, and now look at, I can see my outlines without the photo. It's kind of cool. So if you're not doing grime art, that's okay. You can still do outlines and color in and do a digital illustration kind of like this. You don't have to add the globs. For that reason, I'll keep my globs on a separate layer when I do that part of the demo. I'm going to color in her skin now. So I'm going to make a separate layer for skin color. I'm going to call it skin color. And I'm going to use just a slightly lighter purple to color her in. So I'm going to do this kind of magenta color. Now, I want to use a large brush so it goes a little faster when I color her in, but look what happens. I made my new layer for skin color. I start to paint it in. What is happening here? My outlines are going away. Why? Why did I do it wrong? What did I do? Am I though? But look at my skin color layer is on its own. Oh, what's this? I have to put my skin color layer under my outlines? Boom! Look at that. Your order of your layers matters so much. If you don't think about what order your layer's in, you're going to be confused, not know what's going on. The reason my skin color is coloring over my outlines is my skin color layer is over my outlines layer. So pull your layers to change their order. And now my outlines are going to stay on top even as I go to fill in these outlines that I've got. So I could do the messiest job and my outlines are going to be on top no matter what, because that's the order my layers are in. This is also why I'm such a pain in your butt about keeping your layers separate, because look, if I mess up on one layer, I can erase and my outlines and photos stay intact. This is so important if you want to really have control over what you're doing on each of your layers. So I got my photo, my outline, my skin color layer separate. I'm going to do color in my skin now that I've got it in the right order. Okay, I'm just doing a really quick job, but I know I can go back and clean it up. My brush is a little big, so I'm going to make it smaller so it's not making it so hard to get into these little areas. Cool, cool. That's looking pretty decent. I got to clean up some of these blobs that went outside the lines. Again, I'm just doing this kind of quick. You'll probably want to spend some more time. Okay. So I've got my basic outline, my basic skin color on her face. Now I'm going to do some drips. So to do some drips, I'm going to do these separate because I know there might be people that don't want Aretha to look like a gross, drippy zombie. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it drips. And I'm going to use my eyedropper tool. So just clicking I for iguana on my keyboard, I get my eyedropper. I can get that same purple that I use for the outline back. And now with my brush tool on my drips layer, I'm going to come in and add some gloopy globby texture to her skin. So I'm going to come here and do some. And the key is to make your drips look realistic by having them look organic. So imagine if you like dripped paint or something, or honey, something kind of globby on someone's face. What would those drips do? They would drip down following gravity. They're not going to go to the side. I've had some people struggle with the technique by doing drips that go sideways. That's not really following gravity. That's like, you know, if they were like falling through the air, like you might have drips here, like maybe coming, you know, like she's shouting or something. But your drips generally are going to follow gravity, so they're going to fall down the face. They're also going to follow the curve of the face. So this is a little more advanced if you're like just beginning. But imagine the curves of the face. If she has a drip here, it might drip down along her jawline. So I'm going to have this drip kind of follow her jawline a little bit. It's kind of going to the side. I can change how that looks by kind of having a drip go this way maybe a little bit. That doesn't look quite as natural. So you can mess with it, experiment till things look kind of right. If you're not sure what's not looking right, oops, get feedback from a classmate or from me. Also, vary the shape, like have some that are single drips, some that are double, so they don't all come out looking the same. Because that kind of starts to look like too much of a pattern. All right, she needs some drips on her forehead because I've neglected this area, so I'm going to give her a drip coming down here. All right, I'm going to say that's pretty good to start. So I've got my gross drips. I've got my outlines, my skin color. Look at, I can turn my drips off if I'm like, oh, that did her a terrible disservice looking like a gooey zombie. I just hide them. She doesn't have to have drips anymore. So do those separately if you want. Next piece, I had some people with questions about this, highlights and shadows. If you're doing grime art, I'll show you grime art. And then if you're doing something different like a landscape, I'll show you some of that. But to make this look a little bit more dimensional, I need some shadows. Everything looks kind of flat right now. I know if I want to add something new, I'm going to add a new layer for it. So I'm going to make a new layer, call it shadows. And I'm going to get a slightly darker purple color than my outline because I want it to stand out. So I'm going to come down to my color picker, move this down just a little bit, zoom in. And to make this look realistic, I'm going to pick what direction the light is coming based on my photo. So if I hide all this, I can tell there's a bright highlight coming from this way. There's a light here on this side of her face. So I want my shadows to be on this side because that's going to match what's actually happening in the photo. All right. So with that in mind, getting close, looking at my drips, I know the light's coming from here, so the shadow is going to be on this side. Oops. I realize that my shadows are covering up my outlines, which I don't want, so I'm going to move that layer below. Why are they still covering up my outlines even? Oh, they're above drips. I got to move them below drips. Joy. Okay. Coming in, painting shadows on this side of all my drips because the light is coming from the opposite side. It's like the drips are dimensional and casting shadows on the skin from the drips standing out. Also, this looks a little different because normally I do my outlines with black, but because it's a black and white image, it's not quite working the same. So normally I have my outlines in black. All right, so I'm coming in, adding a shadow next to each drip on the right side of it because my light's coming from the left. And it's making these look a little bit more dimensional, like the drips are casting a shadow on the face. I can also use the same color if I want to add other types of shadows on the face, so like a little bit more dimension, but I might do that. All right. So I've got some shadows under my drips, making those look a little bit more popped out. I'll talk about highlights real quick and then move on to some other stuff. Bless you. All right, making a new layer for highlights. I'm gonna get my skin color with my eyedropper, but choose a lighter color now. So I'm gonna drag it up to get a little lighter. Since my shadows are on the right side of my drips because the light is coming from the left, now I want my highlights to be towards the light. So I'm gonna come in on my drips, add a little highlight inside the drips towards where the light's coming from, so the left side. Little highlight here, little highlight here. So again, my highlights are on the opposite side of the shadows. Again, it looks a little better, I think, when you use black outlines. I'm not totally sold on my purple outlines, but it is what it is. All right, so I'm just going through, whipping out some highlights on the left side of all my drips. All right, so the drips are looking a little bit more dimensional, but the face underneath it looks kind of flat. So I'm going to give the face a tiny bit of dimension. Right above my skin color, I'm going to add a skin shadows. I'm going to use my eyedropper to get the skin color and do just a teeny bit darker. And if you want to turn everything off except the photo, this can sometimes help, so it's not too confusing. But I'm going to come in and just paint in some basic shadows on the face wherever I see shadows in the photo. So right here, there's a little shadow. Some shadow kind of under the eyes right here. I'm just doing a rough job of this. You can do a cleaner job, but I'm just kind of laying in where I see shadow. I might also do highlights, so I'm going to add another layer and call it skin highlights. Because there's a lot of highlights in this photo. Okay. To do that, I need my skin color again. Get my eyedropper. Get a slightly brighter color. Hide these. And again, I'm just coming in with my brush and adding this color wherever I see some highlights. Actually, that's too big. These highlights might not even show because of my outlines, but I'm going to try.
Do we resubmit the new one we did to the same?
Yes, exactly. Thanks.
Do we keep the old one?
You can keep it on there and just turn in your new files if you want. Yeah. Good question, Ronan. Thank you. All right, let's see if this even looks at all good. All right, so I'm going to make a couple little edits because some of my highlights are in spots that look a little weird now with my drips, but that did help to add at least a little bit more dimension to the face underneath. Obviously, I want to come clean up stuff that's not inside the lines. And from there, of course, like if you want to do anything more complicated, like add different color eyebrows or different color eyes or lips or anything like that, you know the basic principle. You just add a new layer, name it what you want to call it, figure out what order it needs to be in once you start painting. Like I'm going to give her yellow lips, sure. And I can tell that this is in the right spot in my layers because it's covering up what I want. And again, folks, just one more plug for why I'm such a pain in your butt about keeping your layers separate. If I go outside the lines and I need to erase the yellow, but I don't want to erase like my drips, my outlines, my skin color, this is why I harp on you about keeping your layers separate, because everything else stays intact when you isolate things on different layers. You don't ruin the whole thing by a simple mistake. If you're ever not sure what layer something's on, like right now, I want to get rid of this little piece inside the mouth that's going outside of my outlines, but I don't know what layer that's on. I'm just going to click the eyeballs one at a time until I figure out what layer causes that to disappear, and it's this one. It's on my skin highlights layer. So I'm going to click that, get my eraser, and now I know which layer I need to be on to get rid of that little detail I don't like. So that's kind of like the concept there with grime art. It's not too complicated. You have all the skills to do it. Now it's just applying the technique. I'm going to save this and show a landscape demo because someone requested that. So I'm going to save it in my demos folder. All right. So I'm going to find... Actually, I might just come around to the individual people now that have questions, because if the whole group's not doing a landscape, I might just check in on the person that requested that. So I'm going to leave this up just as like kind of a reminder of how to organize your layers and some examples of different like techniques. We still will have next class to do some work too, but I'm hoping that by next class we'll all start to be able to wind down on this project. If you have sensitive eyes, lights are coming on. And at this point, if you have questions about technique or what to do, I'm coming around. Owen, I'm going to be right with you, and then I'll put it up still photos. I love that idea. Oh my gosh, do that. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Should I put it on the new password? Oh, good idea. Okay. You can step forward. Yeah, is that about the person in our school that's doing like their scout project? Or what is the story about, Connor?
Ian West.
Oh yeah, his project. Yeah. Did you eat? Oh, you sent it to me here.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so folks, with our last couple of minutes, while I'm coming around to answer questions, I'm also going to put a quick news story on about one of our own LCC students who's doing a project to get musical instruments donated to bands. So in the news, Mavs in the news, we're putting that on while I come around and answer questions.
In this morning's Emily Zone, Jeff is in Carlsbad, where a high school senior is hoping the community can band together. If you're someone with an old gathering done, a Boy Scout needs your help.
These are all students that will basically not work at all.
That's as loud as it goes.
At La Costa Canyon High School.
Right now you can see the bass drum over there. It's got its front little cover taped out.
Is filled with bruised and broken instruments.
A lot of the keys are completely eroded. Cool.
Ian West is the drum major of a band that he says should have more than 100 students in it, but instead only has 19. The struggling music program is a sad song we've heard before, but Ian has a plan, because as a lifelong Cub Scout and Boy Scout,
You have to be prepared. That's the biggest thing.
is your band prepared now?
No, it's not prepared at all. sadly.
I just want to make sure that the students have what they need to play. Charles McCallion is the school's band director. In his first year, you have three trumpet players, but only one trumpet. Yeah, three trumpet players, one trumpet. Charles served in the Marine Corps and knows a leader when he sees one. He's trying to make sure that the future of this program looks good. This is like a graveyard for instruments.
Yes, sir. It is completely broken right now.
Ian hopes his Eagle Scout project will save his own band, and he's got marching orders
No matter how much I tighten this.
for all of San Diego, a program he's calling Play It Forward. If our viewers donate all these instruments, you're willing to just give them away to students who are underserved?
Of course, yes, and I feel that is my responsibility as someone who really cares about music.
The donations will be given to any student in San Diego County who can't afford their own instrument. Sometimes you need more than just a fight song. You need a Boy Scout to fight.
It's more than just band, it's the gift of music. I would be so satisfied to be able to give people who need music. I want to make sure everyone gets the Scout honor.
In the Zeppelin zone,
Scouts up.
Jeff's on CBS.
We want to take you back to 2019. In 2019, his Spinosaurus discovery was named one of the top 20 scientific discoveries of the decade by National Geographic. We're talking about a dinosaur that was bigger and badder than the T-Rex itself. And this month, Dr. Nizar Ibrahim is sharing the story of the Spinosaurus discovery, its lost, rediscovered, at Conrad.
Pop quiz time. That's what's up.
It's probably the strangest dinosaur out there. It's a giant predatory dinosaur, even longer than a T-Rex. It has long crocodile-like with very unusual teeth. Actually, a right cast of a Spinosaurus tooth and carved teeth like a prawn. And this was essentially a river monster. It was a dinosaur patrolling ancient riverways and hunting big car-sized fish. It also had a giant sail on its back, hence the name Spinosaurus. It has a very long spine on its back. So it's a dinosaur like no other.
And it was, so you're saying it was kind of like a river monster, like you said, and its main prey were fish that were the size of cars.
Have a good weekend, Ellen.
That's right. So it's really strange to just think of a place like the Sahara, the river system. But about 100 million years ago, the Sahara was actually home to a huge river system about the size of the United States. So it stretched all the way across the place we now call the Sahara, from Morocco to Egypt. So a very, very different kind of place.
And we know that this kind of conversation gets a lot of kids thinking about dinosaurs, gets them involved. Have you always wanted to be a paleontologist? How did you discover this career?
Well, it started with a book.
Stay right there. I'm going to show you
And,
super quick.
I had this book on dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals, and I was just hooked.
Okay. So, this is what might have gone wrong the last time, but just to make sure right now, we brought in a JPEG, and you've been adding all this cool stuff to your layers, but Photoshop hasn't saved that yet as its own Photoshop. So be careful. We're going to lose all those layers all of a sudden here. Right now, we're saving on the things. So, it's asking me to save that. I'm just going to cancel this and start doing that. That's why. I was like, where is this view coming from? Okay. Because that wasn't a new one. Okay, so this is the one that we're doing. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so you can have different styles. Whenever you see that, this is the same thing that would do if you did Control S basically, but just walk through it. So let's give it a name that's not too much related. So this is the good, because if this computer blows up, you can get on any
Yeah.
other one with it. Now we don't have that star, so that means we could close this whole thing, come back tomorrow, open it up, and all the things in there, because we have
I usually don't follow that. I usually like press home and that's how
close it now or
Yeah.
something. Oh, yeah, no, it's just showing you that beautiful memory. So these are all the projects you have open, and you can see that star and the realization. So it looks like you're doing that. So you can look at all this if you want, but now in the future, like let's say you do something, all of you are like, let's say you do this and you keep it, see where's that and save change. Now when I'm working, I gotta remember to stop and go Control S, because that updates, so that now when I come back tomorrow, now we just won't update. But just make sure that you're doing Control S after the initial save, because that's gonna update the file, so they check Yep, and then just only when you're all done with the whole project is when you save the data. Because that's like save the file and how it
And I
Yep, you can close out. It's gonna probably ask you about all these other projects though, if there's unsafe changes, so this is gonna ask if you want to save those changes or not. Does that all make sense?
yeah.
Cool, yeah, no problem. I'm excited to see how your project turns out.
Yeah.
All right, have a good weekend, David. Thanks.